Chicken fat. That's the secret ingredient. When making chicken and dumplings, replace the butter with chicken fat and it'll be more flavorful. You weren't expecting that, were you? You're used to clicking on the video and having the host not answer your question and having to click through the video like a corn maze to try and find it. That's kind of a shady, underhanded technique YouTubers do to get their view time up, but you're not going to get that here. I respect my viewers more than that. Now, if you've just stumbled across my channel and you're looking for a genuine cooking channel that's informative, descriptive, and educational, you've come to the right place. Consider subscribing to my channel. Anyway, let's make some chicken and dumplings. Okay, the first thing we need to do for this is to get our chicken going. And for that, we're gonna use these chicken leg quarters. I think this is the cheapest cut of chicken that there is, and they're perfect for this. You could also use leg or thigh meat if that's what you have or that's what you wanna use, but I would stay away from breast meat here because that will dry out and ruin the whole thing. So in this case, the lesser expensive cuts are the better ones for this dish. Okay, the first thing we need to do here is to season the chicken fairly liberally with salt and pepper, and you could give this a few hours to dig into the meat. That's actually the ideal option, or you could go directly into a 350-degree oven, which is what I'm doing here. Alright, so we've got the chicken in the oven now, and that should take about 30 or 40 minutes to get done. And the cool thing about leg quarters or chicken legs or thighs in general, if you overdo it a little bit, it's not a big deal. That wouldn't be the case if you were to use chicken breast. So while that's in the oven, let's get our soup portion of the recipe going. For the vegetables here, I'm going with a traditional mixture of onions, carrots, and celery. This is also known as mirepoix, and I'm going for a medium to large dice here, or 1/2 to 3/4 inch. You want them to be sturdy enough to hold their structural integrity without falling apart during the cooking process while still being bite-sized. And once you've got your knife work out of the way, you can go ahead and head over to the stove top and place a soup pot over medium heat along with 8 tablespoons or 1/2 cup of chicken fat. And once that melts, go ahead and toss in all of the vegetables. And some people will say it's best to add them incrementally, but I've noticed that it really doesn't make much of a difference with these particular vegetables, so all at once works just fine. Give the whole thing a stir with your spatula, add a few pinches of salt, and continue to cook these vegetables for 5 to 7 minutes until they've softened up a little bit and the onions have become somewhat translucent. And once you reach that stage, we can work in 4 ounces or roughly 3/4 of a cup of flour, and this is going to make what's called roux, which is a mixture of equal parts fat and flour by weight, and we're using this for the purpose of thickening the soup. This roux needs to cook for about 5 minutes between low and medium, and make sure to keep it moving around with your spatula so that it doesn't scorch on the bottom of the pot. Okay, we can now gradually work in 8 cups of chicken stock, and I definitely made a mistake here. The stock should be fully thawed before adding it. I was slightly asleep at the wheel when getting this ready, but when you turn the camera on, you kind of have to roll with it. So make sure to toss in a few pinches of salt, continue stirring, and this soup needs to be brought to a boil. So while that heats up, let's go ahead and take our chicken out of the oven and allow it to cool for a few minutes before shredding it up. And once the soup reaches a boil like you see here, go ahead and drop the heat down to a simmer. Okay, so I've brought this down to a simmer, and it's got to stay here for about 20 minutes now to cook out any raw flour taste that might be remaining inside of this. And if you watched my video on the 5 French mother sauces from a few weeks ago, you might recognize this. This is basically velouté sauce. We made a blonde roux and we added chicken stock to that, which is the formula for velouté sauce. So it is a velouté-based soup. And to address my little fuck-up rookie mistake that I had there are a few things that can go wrong with roux, and in the sauce making video I did point out one of them, which was not to have the roux too hot because it can splatter and cause burns, and for obvious reasons you don't want that. But another thing that can go wrong is when the stock is too cold, like you saw there when it was partially frozen. What happens is the fat that's within the roux will solidify and it becomes harder to work that back out afterwards. Anyway, let's go over what we're going to do for dumplings. Now when it comes to dumplings all over the world, obviously there are a million different types that are prepared and served in all kinds of ways. But here in America, when you say chicken and dumplings, there are basically 2 types. There's northern style and southern style. Northern style are the fat, fluffy dumplings that float on top of your soup, and southern style are the flat ones that are also known as slicks. I'm going to be preparing the northern style dumplings today. The southern style ones are a little bit more complicated. I'll save that for another video, and if you're wondering what those are, I think those are the ones you get at Cracker Barrel. I can't remember though, it's been a while. Okay, for the dumplings, we're going to start with 10 ounces or 2 cups of all-purpose flour, 1 teaspoon of baking powder, 1/4 teaspoon of baking soda, and 1 teaspoon of kosher salt. And I'm going to stir this mixture up a little bit before proceeding with the remaining ingredients to make sure this gets incorporated evenly. And once you've reached that point, you can work in 2 tablespoons of chicken fat and try to evenly disperse this as well as you can. You can use a fork or a spoon for this, but the easiest way to do it is just to use your hand. And we're going to finish up with 1 egg and 6 ounces of buttermilk. And the reason why we mixed everything prior to adding these ingredients is these ingredients contribute to gluten development, and we want gluten development to be minimal with these dumplings. So at this point, the only thing I'm looking for is even disbursement. Don't take it beyond that point. And what I usually do here is use the dough clump to sort of pick up or velcro up what's on the bottom of the bowl until it's all evenly worked in. Alright, we're ready to head back over to the stovetop and portion these into the soup. And some people get particular about putting these things together. I think they're best when they're irregular and imperfect, so whatever size or shape you get, go with it. And once you've got them all situated into the soup, make sure the heat's on low, go ahead and pop a lid on it and let them cook for 15 to 20 minutes. And when it comes time to check back in on them, make sure they've firmed up a little bit and that they spring back at you when you try and dunk them back into the soup. Well, I'd say these are looking pretty good, so let's go ahead and plate this whole thing up. Start with a bowl of your choosing and make sure you dig down a little bit to get a good amount of the chicken and vegetables. Nestle a few of the dumplings on top, and I'm going to garnish this thing with a little bit of finely chopped parsley. And with that, we've reached the end of the video, so as always, thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.